But I would love to hear some just quick advice for people, young people maybe that aren't familiar with LA, on their best defense on sort of snuffing out or sniffing out a faker. Because I think when you came from the Bay Area, I came from the Bay Area, I remember things that would happen to me. And you want to believe that people are telling you the truth, and you think that you don't realize.
And then they screw you, take your money,
or whatever it is. And I'm just wondering if you could give some quick tips.
Okay. I always tell, because there's a couple of filmmakers up in NorCal that always ask me advice. Like, a lot of film students like my stuff. And I always tell them, one, don't move to LA right away. Like, you can make movies anywhere. Like, that's what a lot of people don't understand. It's like, the technology's cheap now, and there's so many platforms. Like, if you really don't have the urge, don't move to LA. Like, this is just a business. And like, even living in LA now, a lot of things don't shoot in LA. Like, a lot of things do not shoot in LA. Also, I would say create your own content. Don't wait for an opportunity to come to you, because that doesn't happen. A lot of people come here thinking like, oh, I'm gonna walk the streets and Steven Spielberg's cousin, brother, roommate's gonna be like, I'm gonna make you a star. It doesn't happen like that. So always make your own content. I'm trying to think, it's like other advice I would give them for moving to LA.
Or what if you want to be able to trust somebody, they drive a nice car, they seem like they wear nice clothes, but there's just something doesn't sit right. What is
always that? Go with your gut instinct. A lot of people, because I always break it down. It's like, your heart has the passion to do things. Your head's always going to second guess you. That's the reason of logic. Always go with your gut. Your gut is always right. Because I've gone into rooms where I was just like, even like legit stuff sometimes I could walk into, like I pitch stuff to like NBC and stuff, like going in an office, you sit there like, yeah, you're just wasting my time. Like, always go with your gut, because that, also be picky and selective with who you work with and what projects, because the power of no is a good thing. Like, it could be a catch-22. Like, you might not get a lot of work, but if you say yes to everything, you're either spread out too thin, and then people would think you're too busy to work with them. Because if you say yes to one project, you're losing opportunities to other projects that are much better or more rewarding. Because I always go into, when picking a project, 3 things I always ask myself. Will it advance my career? Does it pay well? Or am I passionate about it? If it doesn't have any of those 3 things, I'd be like, nah, I'm not feeling it. It's just like, I've turned down a lot of projects because of like, and you're like, why? I'm like, I don't feel like I have to jump at every opportunity, because I also make my own content where I'm like, I'll make something I want to do. A lot of people don't get that. It's just like, why do something? Because this other project here, do something that's rewarding to you financially, creatively, spiritually. Like, that's how I always look at it. Another advice. Also, this is a good one for being in LA too. I also have this like mantra where it's like, don't compare yourself to others, because everyone's path is different. Because they're going like, oh, why is this person this? I'm like, that's their path. Everyone has their own path. Everyone thinks there's a path they have to follow. Don't label yourself. I know we're in a business where they want to put everyone in a box. Branding is different. Like, brand yourself, find your voice, your vision, but don't label yourself like, oh, I'm weird. And people are like, okay, like, what's weird about you? This and this, and be specific. Don't label yourself. Also, don't complain, that's one I sometimes have to work on, because I'm like, oh, I hate this, because like, there's this meme that's really funny where it's like SpongeBob, where it's like, there's 3 memes, like, young and naive, hopeful and motivated, hate everyone and everything. And I'm like, and I could go into the latter one. I'm like, this sucks. Why am I working in Hollywood? This is garbage. So just like, what was it? Paul Thomas Anderson said something like, don't hate projects. Don't talk bad about projects and stuff, because it's hard to make. Because people don't know, behind the scenes, there's a lot of projects that fall through due to budgeting, creative differences, even at studio levels. Like, I listen to this podcast, I listened to, and they talk to bigger name directors and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, that project fell through because so-and-so couldn't shoot 2 weeks. And like, so it adds up. So a lot of people don't be hard on yourself if something fails, if there's setbacks, rejection. Like, it takes time to do it. Like, I'm 30, like I said, I'm 34, I'm considered old. It took me a while to kind of figure that out. Because in your 20s, you think you know everything. You're like, oh yes, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. And it's like, I even look at some of the work I did in my 20s and I'm like, was this really good? Like, it's so one-dimensional. I'm like, yeah, style is great, but there's nothing there. So it took me time to figure it out. If you figure that out, you'd be set. Like, you could do it.
But where did you learn contract law?
Just on my own. Like, I was like, because I would like sit there and just like study Google, like podcasts, even like stuff on YouTube stuff, like watch your guys' stuff. Like, I always watch certain things where there's so much information out there, you could find it. You just have to look for it. And I always look at it. And also helped, like, back in the day, my grandfather, who's no longer here, he was a judge and a lawyer, so he would always like talk about this, and this, and this. And I'm like, oh, I remember, I was like, oh, because he also ran his own business. So I'm saying like, oh, I'd still do that and that. So subliminally, I was already like, for some reason, my brain is like a sponge where it's like soak up everything I do, because I learn from other people's mistakes. It goes back to, I guess, my hearing and like whatever. It's just like, I want to learn from other people so I don't make those mistakes. Because if you make certain mistakes, like, yeah, you have to learn through your own mistakes. But I always like being the outsider, like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, that worked. I could use that with my mentality or my personality. So it's just like one of my acting teachers said, just soak up as much as you can in a sponge and just wring out what you don't need. So that's what that's my motto in life too. I sit there and I'm like, okay, if I don't need it, I don't need it at the time. So.